Welcome to In the Studio. My name is Calum, and in the studio today with us we have a guest all the way from WA. It is none other than Tim Hammond MP, Shadow Minister for Consumer Affairs and Shadow Minister for Assisting for Resources. How are you today, Tim?
I'm great, Calum. Thanks so much for having me on, and also just take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that you have me on today, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging.
Fantastic. So today you've come all the way from WA over to the NT to, you've got a few things that you'll be attending, conferences I believe, as well as some talks that's going on.
That's right. Look, it's been terrific to come up here. I've come to Darwin a few times, but I have to admit this is the first time that I've ventured further afield from Darwin. As you said before, I've got some responsibilities in consumer affairs and also some responsibilities in resources. So I've been wearing both hats while I've been here. I've been accompanied by the trusty Warren Snowden, who's been fantastic, and we've been down through Catherine, then further afield, having a look at and talking to stakeholders in relation to the current fracking inquiry that's being undertaken.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about the fracking first. I know it is a huge issue still in the NT.
Yeah.
There are mining companies that are still trying to advocate for it, and some shady stuff here and there on occasion. But what's the bigger difference? Is there much of a difference between that of WA and the NT?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. There are a lot of similarities in the two. Just like the Chief Minister, Michael Gunner, did here, in Western Australia, Mark McGowan, who is now our Premier, indicated that there would be a ban on fracking in some areas, a moratorium placed upon fracking, and then an inquiry established in order to really get a better understanding from a scientific and evidentiary point of view as to the nature and extent that hydraulic fracturing may well have in relation to our environment. You guys are a little bit further along here than we are, and I know that the panel are getting close to wrapping up their report and have issued an interim draft final report. And so it was really interesting for Warren and myself to get feedback from all stakeholders on the ground, both industry and landowners and those likely to be affected, as to sort of how they felt about the issue.
So from the reports that are coming out, what is the main thing that people have been finding? Yeah,
look, there's a couple of consistent themes. And I think the first thing that's been really positive from my point of view is that the feedback from just how much of an effort the panel is making to engage in feedback from all aspects of the community has been really good. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem to me that there's any doubt at all that they are determined to make sure that everyone has their voice heard in what is invariably a really tricky topic to get through, because there are a lot of moving parts in relation to what's at stake here. So look, I have to say, as far as any gratuitous third-party feedback goes, the response on the ground has been really pretty good.
Okay, and so you've done some talks, so you'll be doing some more talks about fracking?
Look, I'm doing more listening than talking at this stage, and look, I come from a point of view in terms of the great privilege that it is to serve in Parliament, to listen first before jumping in, and that's really what I'm so keen to do here. It's been great to see so much of this amazing country that you have. We've been all over the place in the first few days, and it's been terrific.
Excellent. So it is still a hot topic issue, fracking. Hopefully something good or positive comes out eventually.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, there's certain areas that are being banned over in WA, and hopefully things like that occur more in the NT as well. So the other reason that you're here, you were talking earlier, is payday loans and rent to pay. And it's in the air, isn't it? It's kind of like It's a half scam, or some of it's actually legit.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly right. And again, what I want to make clear is that our position as it stands is not to abolish this world of what are called small amount credit contracts or small loans, and these are for amounts sort of anywhere up to about $2,000. Because the reality is, we all know that often parents or even single parents on a very financially tight budget, 5 kids to look after, don't anticipate things like the washing machine blowing up, and they've got to get the money from somewhere. Have no issue with that at all. But what we also do know is that it is still a very unregulated market, and there is the ability for predatory type lending practices to be occurring for financially vulnerable Australians. So look, what we know is that there are over 620,000 Australians who are currently in these payday loans, who find themselves trapped in what you might hear being called as a debt spiral. And that is, they struggle to get out of this position. And that's often because they have been given a loan or a rent-to-buy arrangement that they just don't know enough about, and find themselves in circumstances where a $350 washing machine ends up costing them literally $3,500. They've paid 800% interest in a scheme that they just did not know what they were getting themselves in for. We think there's a way through that in relation to trying to find a sensible middle ground. So these types of finance arrangements are still available, but there are appropriate restraints around what lenders can and can't do in terms of offering this sort of credit.
So how would that, so if people are in a certain monetary bracket, so what are the things that you're hoping to implement to actually prevent these types of things happening? That's
a really good question. A lot of the proposed reforms, which I should just say at this point in time, is that this isn't a party political thing at all. I'm really, quite understandably, the community cries out for us guys in Canberra to bang our heads together and exercise more bipartisanship. And I'm really pleased to say that over the course of the last 2 years, these reforms, called the small amount credit contract reforms, do have bipartisan support. There are lots of technical ways in which we suggest that lenders should be obliged to provide information, but also what we're looking at is ring fencing the maximum amounts that people have to pay out of their own pocket. So instead of it being completely unregulated like it is now, what we suggest is that people who get these types of credit should not have to pay, or a lender cannot require them to pay any more than 10% of their net wage back to a payday lender.
Okay.
And so there's also a reform around ring fencing the total amount you can charge over a period of time to make sure that it has either a definite time period or a cap on the maximum amount that can be charged, so people just don't fall into the trap of just paying thousands and thousands of dollars that they don't know they're paying. And the other reason why it's so important to get up to Darwin and get into the territory and talk about this is what we know is that, very sadly, a huge section of our community that is being targeted in relation to rent-to-buy schemes and payday loans are financially stressed Aboriginal families and Aboriginal remote communities. It's happening all across the top end. We're getting reports, certainly a lot of reports these days from the northwest of WA, also reports from Queensland as well. And that's why I'm so keen to kind of meet in the middle in the wonderful territory. And we're engaging with stakeholders tomorrow, a round table, to get a sense as to what's happening on the ground here.
So what are you hoping to actually talk to the stakeholders about?
Two things. Again, I think if we're doing our job properly, we're doing as much, if not more, listening than we are talking. So I'm really keen to get a sense as to what's happening on the ground.
Okay, so you're going to get the stories from either side or from everyone and see what you can actually implement.
Yeah, and then I also want to talk about the fact that there is progress being made in Canberra in relation to actually providing a bit of support around financially vulnerable Australians. That's what we're here for.
Well, there are government organisations like ASIC that implement smart money lending as well as understanding stuff. Is there any other resources that hopefully be developed from this that you're hoping to implement?
There are organisations like Good Shepherd, for instance, who provide interest-free microfinance and interest-free loans. And so it's about two things. Firstly, making sure that we level the playing field as far as predatory lenders go. But we also make people aware that there are other options to help them out of a financially tight spot.
Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Darwin. And of course, make sure you go fishing. There's a $1 million barra out there.
Oh, I'd love to. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Once again, thank you very much for joining us today.